At the age of 26, Michelle was considered by many to have achieved success. She was an investment manager at a prominent firm in the city, living in a modest yet comfortable rented apartment, and had enough savings to soon purchase her own home without needing a mortgage or loan, precisely as she wanted. Everything seemed to be progressing as planned until a phone call from Aunt Sarah turned her life upside down. Aunt Sarah's voice was warm and inviting as she asked, "Michelle, dear, are you coming for Thanksgiving this year?" That familiar voice always brought joy to Michelle. Aunt Sarah had been a mother figure far more than her own mother. Michelle answered, her mind already savoring Aunt Sarah's renowned apple pie. What she hadn't anticipated was the presence of her estranged family members. And the significance of Aunt Sarah's invitation lay in Michelle's long-standing absence from her parents' and older sister Jessica's lives, a rift that had lasted for 8 years. Ever since the day she graduated high school. Upon receiving her college acceptance with a partial scholarship for investment management, she was ecstatic. It was the reward for all her hard work. However, her excitement quickly dissolved on returning home, expecting her parents' pride only to face the conversation that tore their family apart. And we can't fund your college, Michelle. Her mother informed her, eyes fixed on a magazine. We need our savings for Jessica's upcoming wedding. The mention of using grandma's money, intended for Michelle's education, only intensified the emotional turmoil. Her father, shifting uneasily, justified this by saying that Jessica's wedding took precedence. In a moment of raw emotion, Michelle's feelings of being less valued than Jessica erupted into a heated argument. That very night, she packed her bags and left for Aunt Sarah's, the only person who had always treated her fairly. And unbeknownst to Michelle at the time, Aunt Sarah possessed funds saved for her own son's education, who tragically lost his life in a car accident years earlier. She offered that money to Michelle with the promise that Michelle would repay it entirely after securing a job post-graduation. College was challenging. She balanced part-time work at a cafe while adhering to her academic commitments and scholarship, yet she prevailed. After landing a position at a prestigious investment firm, she reimbursed every cent to Aunt Sarah within 2 years. And life was unfolding well for Michelle. She enjoyed her independence. Her career was flourishing. And she deliberately avoided any contact with her family until that Thanksgiving invitation. And on the day of Thanksgiving at Aunt Sarah's. Michelle nearly dropped the pumpkin pie she brought upon seeing her parents, Jessica, and her 2 nieces, aged 6 and 3, assembled in the living room as if they genuinely belonged there. In an instant, 8 years of careful avoidance disappeared. And Aunt Sarah, with apologetic eyes, helped with the pie, stating, "I didn't know they were coming. They just showed up." Stunned, Michelle stood at the doorway, heart racing. Her mother appeared older, with more gray hair. Her father had gained weight, but Jessica still looked like the favored child, managing her 2 kids with ease. And desperate for a moment alone, Michelle excused herself to the back porch. The chilly November air was unnoticed as she clutched the railing, hands trembling. Her mother followed, her voice halting Michelle. "Can we talk?" 8 years of estrangement, and now her mother wanted to converse. And without turning to face her, Michelle questioned, "Why are you even here?" Her mother approached, confessing guilt and a yearning to amend past wrongs. Despite their long silence born of shame, they hoped to seize the opportunity provided by Thanksgiving to apologize. And though anger boiled within, recalling countless occasions of being overshadowed by Jessica. Another part of Michelle noticed the weariness in her mother's eyes and the tremor in her hands. "I need time to think," Michelle finally responded, overwhelmed by it all. Her mother accepted, nodding, urging her to take the time needed. The remainder of the evening passed by indistinctly. I spent the time sitting quietly in a corner of Aunt Sarah's living room, idly pushing turkey around my plate and avoiding making eye contact. True to their promise, my parents and Jessica refrained from pressuring me, occupying themselves by chatting with other relatives, playing with the children, and assisting with dishwashing, occasionally casting guilty glances my way. I observed them when their attention was elsewhere. Mom helped Aunt Sarah in the kitchen. Dad was entertaining Jessica's children, and Jessica exuded a mix of confidence and uncertainty. Their attempts to give me space were sincere, yet their presence dominated every nook of the house. For 2 weeks following Thanksgiving, my mind was preoccupied with nothing else. Each morning, I awoke and found myself replaying the conversation with Mom that took place on Aunt Sarah's porch. Every night brought sleeplessness, as I pondered whether considering forgiveness was a wise decision. One evening, I remained in my apartment, fixedly staring at my phone where Mom's number was still stored. I had never deleted it, inexplicably perhaps because part of me anticipated this juncture. My finger hovered over the call button for an eternity, or so it felt, until I finally inhaled deeply and pressed it. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3, Michelle? My mother's voice resonated hesitantly, yet optimistically. Hi, Mom. I managed, albeit my voice cracked slightly. I've been reflecting on what you mentioned at Thanksgiving. I think I would like to try. Speaking these words felt awkward, but eventually they flowed out. Maybe we could begin anew? A week later, I found myself at the doorstep of my childhood home, bearing a bag of thoughtfully chosen gifts, nothing costly, but all meaningful. I'd selected a scarf for Mom, a book Dad had long expressed interest in, and some educational toys for Jessica's kids. The house appeared smaller and noticeably more worn than my memory of it, with peeling paint and an overgrown garden once fastidiously attended by Mom. Before I could press the doorbell, the door opened suddenly, revealing Mom, who looked nervous yet pleased. You came, she stated. I did, I replied while stepping inside. Within, similar to outside, the house showed signs of aging. Familiar furniture now exhibited wear. Walls begged for a fresh coat of paint, and the carpet showed threads in places. Dad emerged from the kitchen, his demeanor uncertain, while Jessica stood there, her children shyly peeking from behind her legs. I distributed the gifts, keenly observing their reactions. Mom's eyes welled up upon sighting the scarf, and Dad genuinely smiled at the book. During dinner, Mom prepared my favorite childhood lasagna. The reality of their lives gradually unfolded during the meal. Jessica's marriage had ended disastrously 2 years prior, compelling her to return home with her children. Mom's health complications had necessitated a reduction to part-time employment at the library, simultaneous with Dad accepting a lower-paying position after company downsizing. How about you, Michelle? Jessica inquired tentatively, moving her food around her plate. How's work? Good, I replied, striving to maintain a neutral tone. I'm at Morton and Associates now, a large investment firm downtown. The rest of the evening continued, much the same, with careful conversations avoiding sensitive subjects and an unspoken tension lingering beneath the small talk. We all endeavored so hard to mimic normalcy that it felt otherwise. Over the following weeks, a positive transformation seemed to occur. Jessica started visiting me at work during lunch breaks, frequently bearing 2 cups of coffee from the cafe downstairs. We'd sit in the building's courtyard, rekindling our bond over conversations missed during the 8-year rift. Jessica confided in me about her marital breakdown, detailing her ex-husband's financially reckless and uncommitted nature. As Christmas approached, I discovered myself actually anticipating family celebrations. Yet first, there was an important visit to make. A coffee maker, Aunt Sarah exclaimed as she unwrapped her present. Are you implying something about my instant coffee? Perhaps, I teased, pulling her into a tight embrace. Thank you for everything, Aunt Sarah, for standing by me when I needed someone the most. She scrutinized my face, holding me at arm's length. Are you content, sweetheart, with how things are evolving with your family? I think I am, I responded, surprised by the sincerity I felt. It's different now, better. Christmas at my parents' place was unlike the tense dinner during my initial return. Mom had adorned every inch of the house festively, and Dad sang carols spiritedly while assisting with preparations. Emily and Jack, Jessica's children, finally began to warm up to me, especially after they received a science kit for Emily and a set of toy dinosaurs for Jack. They'd gleefully climb over me, asking, "Can you help us build the volcano?" Watching them enjoy their new toys made me realize how much I missed being around a family. Mom and Dad seemed more at ease, laughing and joking like they did when I was young. Months went by, and a comfortable routine developed. Sunday dinners became a tradition, and Jessica and I went on regular coffee outings. Then came the unexpected spring break trip. I hadn't actually planned it, but I overheard Mom mention that the kids had never seen the ocean, so I impulsively suggested, "Let's go next week. I'll book everything." The trip was magical, seeing the amazement on Emily and Jack's faces as they saw the ocean for the first time, listening to their joyful shouts as they jumped over waves, and building sandcastles with Dad like I used to. It was worth every penny. After the trip, everything felt more natural, which is why I wasn't shocked when one night after dinner, Mom and Dad wanted to talk to me. The plumbing in the house, Dad started hesitantly. "It's in bad shape. We've delayed repairs, but," Mom finished, "we really need some help." Right then and there, I wrote them a check. It wasn't a minor amount, but witnessing their relief made it worthwhile. Following that, other requests came in, never anything too much: a new water heater when the old one failed, assistance with school supplies for Jessica's kids, small familial obligations. At a typical Sunday dinner, Mom seemed quieter than usual, only pushing her food around her plate. As Dad served dessert, she finally said, "I lost my job. The library is cutting back, and my position was included. I'm not sure how we'll manage the medical bills and house payments." Her hands shook slightly as she held her coffee cup, and I saw the worry lines deepen on Dad's face. It made them seem older, fragile even. "I can help," burst out of me before I realized I can afford $1,500 a month. Their relief was palpable. Mom began to cry tears of happiness, and Dad hugged me tightly. That marked the start of our new routine. Monthly, I transferred the agreed amount to their account. They never asked for more, but occasionally mentioned needing something particular: new winter boots for Jack, or replacing their vintage microwave. Jessica and I strengthened our bond. Whenever work required me to travel, I'd bring her along. Nothing too lavish: a weekend in Chicago, 3 days in Boston, a quick Miami trip, just sisters catching up. Life settled into a pattern: Sunday dinners, monthly transfers, shopping trips with Mom, helping Jessica's kids with homework. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like how family should be. Then came the call that changed everything. "Michelle, Mrs. Peterson," my landlord's voice was apologetic. "I need to discuss the apartment. My grandson is graduating soon, and he'll be working in the city. I've promised him the apartment." "Oh," I replied, looking at the space that had been my home. Walls I impulsively painted pale blue. The window seat where I'd read on rainy days. "I'm so sorry," she added. "You've been a wonderful tenant. I'll give you ample time to find somewhere else." After the call, sitting by my preferred window spot, thoughts raced. I had been saving carefully over the years. Even with helping my family, my investments were doing well. Perhaps this was not a setback, but a nudge from the universe. The following weeks were filled with meetings with Sarah, my realtor, and viewing apartments during lunch and after work. I was clear about my needs: a modern place close to work with enough room for a home office. I was especially excited about a corner unit in a new building just 3 blocks from the office. I could envision myself enjoying coffee on the balcony, hosting dinner parties in its open-concept kitchen, but I kept these thoughts to myself. I often found myself eager to surprise my family with the good news once everything was settled. "Sorry, Mom, I won't make it this Sunday," I mentioned during our regular call. "There are some work issues." One evening, while I was examining paint samples, Aunt Sarah contacted me. Her voice was tense and deliberate. "Michelle, can you come over? We need to talk. It's important." When I arrived, she was pacing in her kitchen, looking more anxious than I'd ever seen her. She didn't wait for me to sit before she started. "I heard something today," she began, gripping a cold coffee cup. "Something you should know." Linda and Karen, longtime family friends who had known us since childhood, were present at a book club. My aunt continued, struggling with each word. They mentioned encountering your parents and Jessica at the grocery last week. Apparently, after you began aiding them financially, your family has been talking about you to many others. What do you mean, talking? I asked, though I felt a chill spreading in my chest. They've been calling you their personal ATM, she said bluntly, making jokes about how your fancy job finally has some use. Jessica's been telling people she merely hints at wanting a trip, and you'll cover the cost. The room felt like it was spinning. That can't be right. There's more. Aunt Sarah's voice softened. Your mother has been boasting about not needing another job because Michelle is financially dependable. I sat there, as if I were punched in the stomach. Part of me wanted to dismiss it and defend them, but I knew Aunt Sarah wouldn't fabricate this, and suddenly aspects started making sense. The way conversations shifted when my job was mentioned. The more frequent requests for money, the scheming glances I occasionally noticed them exchange. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Aunt Sarah reached for my hand. I debated telling you, but you needed to know. I sat, pondering the past year, those family dinners, trips with Jessica, and monthly financial support. Had it all been an act? Slowly, an idea formed. 2 days later, I stood before my parents' house, my suitcases packed. I'd relocated my furniture to Aunt Sarah's garage earlier that day. I'd rehearsed this repeatedly. Taking a deep breath, I rang the bell. Mom answered, surprise stark on her face. Michelle, what are you doing here? What's with the suitcases? Dad and Jessica came up behind her, appearing equally perplexed. Perfect. I let my lip quiver, blinking as if suppressing tears. I got fired, I stammered. There were budget cuts and mistakes in my work. They want me to repay bonuses. I can't afford the apartment anymore. Can I stay here for a couple of months until I stabilize? The silence lasted 3 seconds before Mom's concerned look shifted to something harsh and foreign. Does this mean you won't be sending the monthly money anymore? She demanded. Any pretense of sympathy vanished from her voice. My heart cracked slightly, though I anticipated this. No, Mom. I won't have any extra funds for now. Jessica advanced, her face flushed with anger. What about our Europe trip next month, the one you promised me? My hands trembled, but I maintained the act, shaking my head and looking down. That's when chaos erupted. You stupid, irresponsible girl. Mom's shriek made me flinch. How could you let this happen? What kind of investment manager gets fired? Dad chimed in, his face red with fury. We should have known you'd ruin this, like everything else. You can't stay here, Jessica hissed, yanking my suitcases. There's no space. And I'm not sharing with a failure. I watched in disbelief as she dragged my luggage outside, as though it were trash. These were the same people who hugged me at Christmas, who cried grateful tears when I helped, who claimed repentance for past wrongs. We don't need you here without your money, Mom sneered. You'll never get another decent job after being fired. We're not supporting a deadbeat. I stood there, absorbing it all. The facades had finally crumbled, exposing the unpleasant reality beneath every Sunday dinner, every family moment, every calculated act. Aunt Sarah had been correct from the start. Observing my mother's contorted expression, my father's flushed face, and Jessica's scornful look, I surprisingly felt a sense of calmness. Something inside me that was barely holding on finally gave way. Without uttering a single word, I left the room, dragging my suitcases behind me. Their voices rose into a chorus of insults. Leech, ungrateful brat, don't come crawling back. I silently wheeled my bags down the driveway, their angry shouts trailing me like vengeful wasps. Curious neighbors peeked through their windows, but I couldn't bring myself to care. 20 minutes later, I was at Aunt Sarah's doorstep. Seeing the look on my face, she enveloped me in a comforting hug, and I finally allowed myself to cry. I suppose they showed their true colors, didn't they? She murmured, gently smoothing my hair. Mustering a weak smile, I took out my phone. I opened my banking app to stop the monthly transfer into my mother's account. Following that, I canceled Jessica's European vacation, both the hotel and flights, with just 2 clicks. The 2 weeks I spent at Aunt Sarah's transformed into a cocoon, a safe haven where I could process everything that had occurred. During my stay, my realtor called with exciting news. "Remember that corner unit you fell in love with? The sellers accepted your offer." Everything progressed swiftly after that. Paperwork, inspections, final walkthroughs. It all became a hectic blur of signatures and arrangements. Before long, I found myself holding the keys to my very own apartment, my hands trembling with a mix of excitement and disbelief. Aunt Sarah assisted in transferring everything from her garage into my new place. We spent the weekend arranging furniture, hanging artwork, and personalizing the space. She even insisted on selecting new curtains for the enormous windows. That evening, after Aunt Sarah left, I acted on impulse. I took a photograph in my living room, city lights twinkling behind me, and posted it online with the caption, "Dreams do come true." Finally a homeowner, no mortgage, just years of hard work paying off. I deliberately knew who would see it. Sure enough, within 2 hours my phone rang, my mother's number flashing on the screen. I took a deep breath before answering. "What is this photo about?" she demanded. "What apartment?" "I thought you were fired." I settled into my new armchair, the weight of it all seeming surprisingly light. "Actually, Mom, I wasn't fired. I'm still employed, still successful, and now a homeowner," I calmly replied. "I just needed to test something." Her voice rose with incredulity. "Test?
Why?"
I could hear my father and Jessica in the background. "I wanted to see if you cared about me, or just my money. I got my answer when you flung my suitcases out and called me a leech." There was a brief silence, followed by chaos on their end. Dad cursing, Jessica shouting about deceit, and my mother's tone suddenly turning syrupy sweet. "Sweetheart, we were just worried about you. Of course, we care about you. Let's put this past us and get back to normal." I laughed aloud. "Normal? Where I fund everything while you mock me. Don't worry, you can manage without a leech."
"And Jessica?"
"I canceled your Europe trip. I'll go instead."
"Goodbye."
I hung up and promptly blocked their numbers and social media profiles. It felt liberating, like setting down an unbearable weight. They tried calling with different numbers, sent emails, even visited my office building days later, but security had been warned. Seeing them turned away didn't sting. It brought immense relief. That weekend, Aunt Sarah joined me for dinner at my new home. I'd prepared her favorite lasagna, and we settled on my balcony, observing the sunset. "Are you okay?" she asked, refilling our wine glasses. "I have everything I need right here," I replied, raising my glass. A home of my own, a job I love, and the only family member who truly mattered. Aunt Sarah clinked her glass against mine, and we sat together in contented silence, watching the city lights unfold before us. Suddenly, I realized, sometimes the family you create for yourself is much more precious than the one you are born into. And occasionally, the toughest lessons lead to the most remarkable beginnings.